Hello and welcome. My name is Russ Morrow, and it's my pleasure to act as host for this week's virtual summit brought to you by NAPW. I'd like to extend a special welcome to the many NAPW members joining us today. For those of you who may not be familiar, NAPW is an online and face-to-face community made up of over 850,000 professional women who join together to cultivate valuable business connections, to develop professionally, and to promote themselves and their businesses. To learn more about NAPW and the many benefits of membership, please make sure to visit our website at napw.com. This webinar, Maximize Your Efficiency, Talent and Results by Hiring Virtual Professional Freelancers, is part of our 3-day virtual summit for entrepreneurs where, over the course of 12 interactive sessions, we will offer some amazing information and guidance from experts who will provide insights on how to plan, launch, run and expand your own business. Topics that we will cover will include how to get started, how to market your business, how to negotiate, how to manage your finances and taxes, and how to build your brand. Before I introduce our guest speaker, a few housekeeping points. Everybody is on mute, so please don't worry about being overheard if you accidentally sneeze or cough. Questions, and we know that there will be many. Throughout the session today, you'll be able to submit written questions, and there will be some time to answer these at the end of the presentation. Depending on the volume, we may not get through all of your questions, but if that happens, we'll do our best to answer them via blog post or by email, and we'll look to find a way to communicate answers to you. And the question that we get every time, will you be able to see the presentation again if you miss something? Yes, recordings of today's webinar and all others over the course of the virtual summit this week will be emailed and will be available to view again online here on the Bright Talk platform. So it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for today. Laurie Mercer is the founder of How She Quits. After spending 20 years in corporate, leading multi-million-dollar technology and marketing initiatives, Laurie broke free as a virtual professional. Her online marketing and technology agency, LaurieMercerCTO.com, serves small online businesses with strategy, marketing, and implementation needs. Laurie created HowSheQuits.com to help other mums leverage their professional skills and to build their own virtual businesses. Over the course of the session, Laurie is going to discuss not only the benefits of using virtual professionals in your own business, but will also teach anyone who's considering becoming a virtual professional what prospective clients are looking for and how you can wow them. Laurie, thank you for joining us today, and over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Russ. Can you hear me okay still?
And indeed.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. It's been really refreshing being a part of an initiative in an organization like National Association of Professional Women. There's just so much good that can be done here. So I'm gracious to you and everybody that's online listening today because I know that your time is valuable. I'm kind of a get down to business girl, so I'm going to dive right in and get into the program. What we're going to cover today is why do you want to outsource, what you can outsource, who you should hire, where you can find them, and then in the end, how do you make it a success? What's a win-win relationship look like in this space? As Russ said, I am a virtual professional. I hire virtual professionals. I train them. I help organizations place them. So hopefully you'll learn something new today. Okay, so why outsource? Number one is because you need to stay focused in your zone of genius. Okay, so maybe you haven't outsourced before, but let's take a quick look at why. We tend to cling to too many of our own tasks on our own, right? Like there's things on your plate that you could totally outsource right now that you're thinking, well, I got to do that myself, or I can do that better. And what happens is you end up frustrated and you end up worn out. And it's because you're not working in your own zone of genius. You actually were made to be working in that space, and that's the valuable work that you need to be getting done. That's where you were gifted and have the most meaningful skills to give and how you're going to probably make the biggest impact with your business. So our goal is to look at how we can outsource as much of everything else that you can off your plate, all right? Now, some of you might have seen this matrix before, the Eisenhower box or the Eisenhower matrix, it's called. You can look at the quadrants there, and it's to help you decide where you should be spending your time. It's a great matrix to look at when you're starting your day and you've got your to-do list. You know, what's urgent and important? What's important but not urgent? What is not important and urgent? And what is not urgent and not important, right? So you can see that big column in the lower left that says delegate. What can someone else be doing for you, right? Scheduling, travel arrangements, managing your social media. There's some examples that are in that column. What should you be doing is stuff that's in your zone of genius or that's really strategic to your business. You need to be the one probably doing the networking, doing some of the research, long-term business strategy, right? Those are things that you can't really take off your plate. But there are a lot of other things you can take off your plate so you can do more important work in your zone of genius, right? Some people take this chart and they will put dollar signs by each task also to say, gosh, if I spend my time down there in the delegate or even in the delete category and my time is worth $100 an hour, $200 an hour, it's like I just paid somebody $100 an hour to book a flight for me, right? So when you start thinking about it that way, you might find some more things that you could take off your plate. I did this exercise today. I wanted to go through and think about what was on my plate today that I could pry out of my little fingers and give to somebody else and get more work done on my business. So I did a quick list. I have some trainings that I did a year ago that need to be rebranded into my new business look and feel. So that's not something I should spend time on. I could totally outsource that. The thought leadership is all done. It just needs to be reformatted. There was also an Excel that I sort of made a mess out of. I got the answer I needed. I worked the data like I needed, but I need to present it to some other people. So cleaning up that Excel, making it more presentable, totally outsourceable. Another thing, I'm a techie by trade, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself in a second, but behind all of this, I do have a software engineering degree, so I tend to like to push up my sleeves and get into the nuts and bolts of things. I am having this issue with my Google Apps for Business right now that I could totally figure out. I could totally sit here and probably spend 2 hours and totally sort it out. But you know what? I shouldn't be spending 2 hours on that because there's somebody out on Upwork that I could hire right now that could take that over for me, right? So just being totally transparent, those are some things I would take off my plate today. All right, so why go virtual? Because you could hire somebody right local to you. You could hire somebody that, you know, could come into your office if you have your own office. And this is probably mostly targeted to those of you who are working in brick and mortar offices and maybe haven't thought about outsourcing beyond those walls. The number one reason, that I can summarize this in a nutshell, is that you can get really highly skilled specialists without paying full-time fees, okay? In the corporate world, we're used to kind of saying, oh, we have a need for this, we have a position open, and you're either gonna hire a full-time contractor or a full-time employee, and that starts to be a really big expense. But what if you could get a specialist, right? A web design specialist, a copywriting specialist, and you buy blocks of hours, or you buy a few hours a week from that person, and they can really move your business forward in a big way. You don't have overhead, they bring their own laptops, you don't have to have office space for them, and really the biggest advantage here is that you're getting an expert onto your team in a really efficient and fast way. Finding the expert. So if your team member is taking too long at video editing, right? So say you've already have some team members and there's just a task that they are really struggling with. So let's use video editing as an example, because that can be a really tedious task. Video editing is a great example of something that you could find a specialist, make a process and say, hey, every time we shoot these raw videos, we're just going to send them over to Joe or Susan, and they're going to process them and edit it for us like that, right? That's why I love going virtual. Okay, so let me stop for just a second and tell you a little bit about me. As Russ said, I did spend over 20 years in corporate. I led a lot of different teams. I actually did a lot of hiring and a lot of organizational design, even though I came up through the engineering ranks, and spent a lot of time in marketing and program development. Many of the teams I led actually were remote teams in multiple time zones. So this learning to work with somebody who's not sitting right next to you thing is totally doable and totally something that we can talk about today. My goal, I'll talk a little bit about how she quits. My goal was to be out of corporate by the time my oldest hit middle school. So you can see there's my husband and my 4 children. He's a firefighter, and one of the paths that propelled me actually out of corporate was a blog that I wrote called Firefighter Wife. So that was part of the journey and part of the story. But as I was doing that and as I was building my business, I knew that by the time this guy right here hit middle school or this young lady right here hit middle school, I was going to be needing to be home, right? When that bus comes at 3 o'clock and you have a crying 13-year-old, that's where you need to be. You can't outsource that to a nanny, right? Like that's just a different place. And that mom part of me was totally calling my heart. So I hit that. Well, I missed it by about 2 years, but since that time I have been home, working from home as a virtual professional freelancer. I am a marketing and technology strategist. I have a small team of virtual professionals who help me implement online marketing solutions for really business owners, really people in the online marketing space, a lot of entrepreneurs. What happened is that I was in such a need. My business was growing. I was such a need for hiring more virtual professionals. And I was such a blast doing it myself, working from home, sitting here in my home office, doing webinars like this. I just knew that there's other moms probably trapped in their corporate jobs that didn't even realize the potential of the work that they could be doing. Really talented people that I could be hiring even to support my business. So I launched my own training called How She Quits to really train up women, especially as virtual professionals, and get them home into a more flexible position with their family. So I can really speak to you from all sides of the equation: hiring virtual professionals, being a virtual professional, and then even designing like what is the right virtual professional setup for your organization. You know, should you hire one jack of all trades, or should you hire these two specialists? And should you take somebody that's 20 hours a week, or should you take people only for a project or ongoing work? There's all kinds of questions like that that we can talk about today. I want to share that I use the term virtual professional, and some of you may be used to hearing VA or virtual assistant or even freelancer, but I use the term virtual professional because as I broke into this space, I didn't want to be described as a VA. I'm doing a lot more strategic work than just assistant work. And there's a lot of other people out here who are really doing professional work, but they're doing it remotely, right? Graphic designers, web designers, even social media strategists, right? They are professionals. And assistant just didn't have the right connotation with it. Now, I think there is still a role for a virtual assistant, and it's a great place for somebody to start and break into this market. But they can really do a variety of work, especially in the online marketing space. I really think the term virtual assistant is really kind of special to the online marketing space. So virtual professional, in my opinion, is anyone with professional skills who works remotely on a contract. Freelancer, it's a little more broadly and historically used, but you know, sometimes that term freelancer can have a negative connotation, right? Like if you're coming from the corporate side, you're thinking, oh, there's that guy that won't commit to a job. You know, they want to work from the beach in their flip-flops. So I'm okay with the term freelancer, but just note that some people have a negative connotation around that. So this is why you'll hear me say virtual professional as I talk through all of this. Okay, so I'm going to get right to the meat and potatoes. This is a matrix that I made of what I think are some of the most outsourceable tasks, especially in the online marketing space. And as they kind of progress through skill levels, right? So there's sort of tiers of virtual professionals that you'll find. Kind of the beginner tier I call a $15 to $25 an hour rate. Intermediate is getting into the $25 to $40 an hour rate, and then advanced is really, I put it $40 an hour and above. If you liken this to a corporate salary, a full-time corporate salary, this ends up being, so the quick math is there's 2,000 work hours in a year, right? So up here, this is an $80,000 a year or more employee. This is a $50,000 to $80,000 a year employee, and this is a $30,000 to $50,000 a year employee. So if you think back to like recommended salaries for different positions, that kind of gives you a framework for how much you should be paying for what skill set, because really the virtual professional market is fresh and new and kind of not mature yet. So people are all over the board, so you kind of got to know what you're stepping into. But I blocked this into 3 categories: general online marketing, specialist skills, and then kind of what's their capability level. So here's the real tasky stuff, right? General online marketing, blog format and posting, customer support, graphic design, doing like basic graphic design, right? Like they're not a pure graphic designer, but they can get into Canva and do some graphics for you. Social media management, some basic WordPress work, and some basic kind of dragging and dropping inside email marketing solutions like ClickFunnels, like Entreport, like MailChimp. Moving up this rank, you start to have somebody who basically has more of this project under their belt and more of an understanding of your brand, your themes, your messaging. Somebody at this level could really complete perhaps a whole website redesign, a whole sales page, an email funnel, and email drips, still with your guidance. Then out here in the advanced area, you're really looking for somebody who can define and implement a complete website, a complete sales page, a complete campaign, maybe even ghostwrite for you. Like they're really out here in the expert level that can give you strategic guidance. This is why in the specialist category, I didn't put anybody down here in the beginner level, because really what I see pricing wise in the specialist category is that if you want a graphic designer or copywriter or anybody who's an advanced web designer, or somebody who's making publishable graphics, which means something that's going to print, right? Like a magazine that goes to print, or media for your company, they're really more into this pricing zone. All right, so there's this soft skill as well, and I'm going to talk about this in more detail, but this capability level, right? Like what can you expect somebody at each of these levels to complete? At the beginner level, I would expect somebody to be able to work independently on tasks that you assign to them. At the intermediate level, I would expect that they can manage one whole project end to end, which means they're starting to begin to delegate a little bit. And of course, at the advanced level, strategic planning, team management, they're really going end to end on everything. Like you could really even offload a whole division or a whole launch of your company to somebody at this level. All right, let's see. Couple questions. Could you recap the Eisenhower box? Yes. Okay, I'm going to go back and answer some of these questions at the end, if that's okay. All right, so if you're not familiar with Upwork, Upwork is just one of the places. I'm going to give you some others where you can go find freelance workers. I just want to throw this slide in here to show you that Upwork is a place that they do quarterly list of like what are the fastest growing skills. So this is basically what are the fastest growing skills inside Upwork that people are outsourcing. So it's a real interesting list, right? Like Upwork tends to be a little more techy, so kind of take that for what it is and throw it out. But you can see if you're looking for the things you could outsource, go look at their skills list. Asana work tracking, so project management, just like keep me on track, keep things rolling along, is number one. This was Q1 of 2017, and you'll even see Instagram marketing out here, right? There's some legal, and here's some more techie stuff. All right. So now we're moving into who to hire. Hopefully by now you've got some examples even listed on paper of what you think you can start outsourcing and what you think it might start to cost you. The question, are pricing for outsourceable tasks regional, national, or suggested average? Personally, I'm sitting in Ohio, but I have seen these rates hold across the country. I have virtual professionals across the US. These would not be rates for overseas VAs, like somebody maybe who's working in the Philippines. I've seen rates anywhere from $5 to $10 an hour for those working in the Philippines, but it's sort of a different market. I'm going to talk about that in a second. So actually, maybe even on the next slide. All right, so who to hire. I want you guys to realize that these virtual professionals are people just like you. They are moms. They are people who are sitting in their home offices doing the kinds of tasks that I had on that page. I personally pay 8 to 10 subcontractors a month just with my small little agency doing a variety of different tasks. Claire and Tiffany are two examples that I wanted to show to you. You can find their profiles and some others out at my website, lorimercercto.com/virtual professionals. What I like to do is showcase those who complete my trainings there. And we teach them, how do they present themselves? How do they rate themselves on skills? So these rating charts are their self-defined ratings for, and those words are kind of small to read, but how do they feel about graphic design, customer support, Excel, data management, tool, tasks like that. And the reason it's nice to have the self-ratings there is because it shows how confident they feel in their own abilities. You absolutely want to hire somebody who's confident in working in their gifts and working in their strengths. Okay, so there's a couple examples. Let me talk for a second here then about the overseas options. They are lower rates, but you are going to have a longer lag time in communication. So I have used a lot of overseas contractors as well. I just pick them strategically for certain projects where you know what you're getting into. You know that you're going to have a little more time on that project. You know that it's going to be, just take a little more time just purely because of time zones, right? They're sleeping right now. So if I put something out to them, they're going to address it, and I'll wake up in the morning and there'll be some answers. So it just takes a little more effort when you're working with overseas. These are examples, and I really like to, in this slide and the rates that I showed you, they're women who you can be in contact with daily. They're in your time zone, and you can really move fast for your business needs. Oh, you're leading into my next question. Are there any tasks that you wouldn't suggest outsourcing to a virtual professional? Yes, I'm going to get to that in a second. So virtual professional must-haves. So let me tell you guys, it's very easy to get to the virtual professional market right now. So there are a lot of people out there who just put their profile out on Upwork or one of the other sites, but maybe they don't have any experience yet. So you do have to do your homework and check into their experience and their skills. You want somebody who's reliable, who's responsive. You want somebody who has high-speed internet, right? So I like to ask for a video of them. Like when I do my application process, which you will see, I ask them to submit a video. That shows me a couple things. One, somebody who's confident in themselves is not going to be afraid of a 3-minute video that they send over to me. I get a feel for their communication style. I get a feel for their confidence. And I know if they have high-speed enough internet to do video, right? Because a lot of the conferencing that happens with your virtual professionals will be done via video conference. So high-speed internet is a non-negotiable. And believe it or not, there's still a lot of places that don't have it. You want them to be on time, right? You want them to be a professional communicator. You need to look for a portfolio of work, and you should really look for client referrals as well. It's definitely acceptable to ask for client referrals. I will tell you that the best virtual professionals, like when you go out and start looking on Upwork, Hire My Mom, these places I'm going to show you, look for somebody whose portfolio, whose profile shows that they've really put a lot of attention into what they're presenting, because that shows you the kind of attention that they're going to put into your work. Look for examples. If you're hiring somebody doing graphic design, look for examples of their graphics. Do they do a variety of styles, or are they sort of all one style that doesn't go with your brand, right? A graphic designer who can tackle a variety of styles is going to be more versatile than somebody who, say, only works in the girly, frilly flowers and, rainbows kind of graphic design. Okay, so these are virtual professional must-haves. Do not hire somebody that doesn't meet all of those. Now, this is the virtual professional competency chart that I was talking about. One thing that I've realized as I've been training up people in this space is that I sometimes get forgetful of how much good personal development I received when I was in corporate. I had some really great leaders, some really strong mentors, and some really good training programs when I was in my corporate job, which is one of the reasons I stayed there for 20 years. As I'm getting into this space and helping women exit corporate and start their own positions, I'm realizing that a lot of them did not have that kind of personal development training. Okay, so I've been putting a focus in my training on a professional competency matrix. So if you're coming out of corporate, you've probably seen something like this from HR, right? When you do annual reviews, there's skills that you're rated against, and then there's competency levels. I just did a generic level 1, 2, and 3 here that I, again, tied to the rate of pay, by the way. I know this is probably kind of small to read, but yes, you guys will get a copy of these slides. And these are soft skills, but they're really critical, because even the best graphic designer, right, who does not have solid project management skills, or a WordPress developer who does not have solid project management skills, maybe they're level 3 in talent, but they're a level 1 in project management skill, they're going to slow you down. They're going to be difficult to work with. If you can't organize files well, if you can't understand the difference between a task and what's a whole project, if you can't use a tool like Asana or Trello or Basecamp for project management. That's what are some examples in this competency matrix. Now, I would love to go through this in extreme detail. I think that this slide alone is probably a whole nother hour of presentation, but I want to really move forward and get on to the hiring aspect. What you need to think about when you look at this slide is just put into context which of these soft skills are important for your project and your needs. And, you know, are you trying to hire somebody who's like okay working in this level, or do you really need somebody who can do these things? Because if you hire somebody who's a level 1 in competency and you expect them to do a level 3, it's going to be a lose-lose for everybody, because this person is not going to feel appreciated, confident, like they're able to do the job, and you're going to be frustrated with the results of the work. Okay? Okay, so best practices when hiring a beginner. There are good tasks that are good for a beginner. And most of you who've never hired a virtual professional, you're probably going to start with somebody in that $15 to $25 an hour box, right? If you have repeatable, systemized tasks, if you can have predictable, measurable outcomes, that's what you need to be moving towards a beginner. Versus more challenging tasks for a beginner would be you come to them with a concept, but the project sort of isn't outlined yet. An example might be, I come to my team sometimes with I think I want to add this new course into my training, and here's what I'm thinking. And some of them will totally grasp the vision and be able to run with it, some of the level 3s, but the level 1s are usually like, that's a really good idea. And then you'll finish the whole meeting, they'll be like, all right, what am I supposed to do next? Because they're really down here in the, I can do great things when you tell me exactly what to do, because they don't have the experience yet to kind of, take a whole concept and turn it into a project. Okay. Examples of those. So launching a new brand, creating a whole website, right? Like that's more in the challenging, but things that are good tasks for a beginner, give them a planned social media strategy and have them execute. Give them a plan for customer support and have them execute. Give them your raw content for an article and have them polish it up, post it, follow a process where here's all the 7 things we do in a blog post before it goes live. Those are great things for a beginner. I want to answer right now this question. I love the competency level idea. Do virtual professionals expect to have regular reviews? If so, should you use these as a basis of a review? I think that it would be a great basis for review. Honestly, I made this because I saw nothing like it on the market anywhere. I think a lot of virtual professionals do not expect a review because, like I said, maybe they weren't getting that in their corporate days. I think also they're picking up a lot of clients who aren't necessarily working in professional mode. They're sort of, how fast can you get that done for me? Okay, great, let's move on. And what I find is that if you can, be a professional to those you hire and hire professionals, then you're going to develop a really good long-term partnership, and you both will benefit in the end, because it's really expensive to fire and hire new contractors or any new employee, right? So that's my thoughts on that. Yeah, I think when I talk about the contracts later, you'll see that I talk about having contracts that have review periods built in. Okay, so somebody asked earlier, like, when should you hire? I'm not sure exactly how you asked it, but it's when should you hire more advanced freelancers? If you need to define a strategy, if you need to execute a full project, if you need a real specialist, web designer, copywriter, graphic design, that's when you really need to go to an advanced virtual professional. So look at my matrix again, and that'll also help you decide. Okay, let's move into where you find these people. So 3 places. Number 1, your network. Number 2, online work boards. And number 3, you really can train somebody up to do what you need. So let's just start with your network. Let me catch up on my notes over here. Okay. When I train my virtual professionals, I tell them their first client is absolutely going to come from their network. Like 99% of the time, this is a true statement. There is, and this is the case too for hiring, there's already somebody in your network who's using a virtual worker, and it's a simple ask, is there somebody you'd recommend for blank? The virtual professional network is very much a referral-based business. So the best ones, they don't even market. They really just get spread by word of mouth. This is the case with my agency. We have a project queue and it's all word of mouth. I spend almost zero advertising dollars bringing in new projects and new clients. It all comes word of mouth. So that's kind of one of the beauties of this business, but then it's also one of the secrets, right? Because to find the best people, you really need to tap into your network. You know, as soon as you find a good graphic designer, a good WordPress developer, a good copywriter, you keep them in your back pocket and you make them your best friend so that they're available for the work when you have projects. I also do not advise hiring friends and family. This is kind of a general business rule, not just a virtual professional rule, but I think it's tough to separate friendship and business. And especially in this place where you're new to hire and, you know, the work is a little fuzzy. Okay. Oops. Let's see. Okay, online work board. So I just talk about 3 here. There are so many, you guys. If you go to lorimercercto.com/findwork, this is where I send virtual professionals who are looking for projects. And there's a little roundup there in more detail than this. And there's always new job boards coming. But here's the thing. You don't have to know all the job boards. You just sort of have to find the one that matches to the kind of work that you're trying to hire for and can understand the differences. So, for example, flex jobs, a little more corporate-y, a lot less scammy, a little more US-based options. Upwork, way more freelance, very international. It's more like you need to watch the reviews closely and kind of the billing, like how many hours does that freelancer build to find a good high quality candidate. And you actually, with Upwork, you pay through Upwork. So that's an interesting kind of different twist on that scenario. HireMyMom.com. Love the name. I love the branding. Obviously, there's more moms here. It's heavy in the online business experience, a lower volume of jobs and projects, but a little more specialized. I would say that some of what I tell my virtual professionals is that be careful of lower pay over here, because I do think there's some people out there that go, oh, she's just a mom, I only want to pay her $8 an hour, and their skills are really worth, you know, $20 an hour. So in this space, make sure you kind of have your professional hat on extra well. Okay, so thirdly, the third place you can find somebody is you can train somebody up. The number one thing I hire for is somebody's ability to learn. What does a high potential candidate look like for you? I think that they're a fast learner. Their goals align, right? So what I mean by goals align, and this applies to whoever you hire, either you're looking for short term and they want short term, or they're looking for long term and you're looking for long term, or, you know, it's a student who just needs something for the summer versus it's somebody who's making a career transition is looking for a long-term partner. You know, ask them what their goals are and see how they align with yours. It's somebody who's very self-aware, and it's somebody who's low maintenance. Okay, so these last 2 bullets come from lots of experience. We've all managed people who are just a little higher maintenance, right? I can't find that file. Can you explain that a little more? Well, I'm not comfortable with this. You know, somebody that it takes a lot of touches back and forth to get work done is, in my opinion, not a good virtual professional. Here's something that I teach my virtual professionals as well. Women especially have this problem when they say, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. A woman that always apologizes, like if we miss a deadline, if we miss something, if there was an attachment on an email, like I don't need to hear I'm sorry a zillion times. We make mistakes, right? So if you're self-aware yourself, you can sort of start seeing these triggers of somebody who's confident, who's going to push forward on their own, and who then might be somebody that you could go, hey, you know, I see you're really talented in this creative space. I know you don't know Photoshop yet. I know you don't know how to do WordPress blog, but it's actually easy to learn those tools, and I'd really like to take your brain and apply them over here. Okay? All right, let's see. Moving on down through my notes. We're about halfway in, right? We're doing good? Okay, hiring steps.
We're doing well.
We're doing good? Okay, Russ, thanks for the check-in. Hiring steps. So this is really pretty straightforward. No different than any other kind of hiring steps, but I want you to note number 2 and number 3, automated interview and application method. Okay, so that's kind of part of my secret sauce in working in this virtual professional online space. And it looks something like this. First, you got to make a job description, right? And in your job description, it needs to be very specific about what skills you're looking for, what experience you're looking for, what hours and availability, what length of work, meaning, you know, is it 10 hours a week? Is it 40 hours a week? Is it a 1-month contract? Is it an ongoing? There's no rules for this. That's what's kind of cool in the internet space. There's no rules, right? Like if you wanted to make a video job description, you could. If you wanted to make a graphical one, you could. You can be super creative and create a job description that's going to attract the right person and repel the wrong person. Does that make sense? I want you to use words in your job description like the right candidate will, ... or this is not for you if, ... Some examples of things you might put there. This is not for you if you're working a full-time job and not available between 8 and 5, right? A lot of freelancers are freelancing on the side, which is great. That's exactly what I did, how you get out of corporate. But sometimes you have projects that don't fit that and you really need access 8 to 5. The right candidate will know how to use Adobe Photoshop inside and out, right? You can be very specific with those words, and it's going to help you self-select the right people into the interview process. Okay, that's the goal here, is that we're automating and making this more efficient, because when you actually go to hire somebody, you guys know it's a project in and of itself. This is actually a job application that I put out on Craigslist. It actually happened to be for a lot of virtual assistant kinds of work, but I really wanted somebody local because I had some hands-on kind of personal assistant errand work that I wanted to be done with it. And I learned my lesson when I wrote this really exciting looking job description and I put it out on Craigslist, and I had like 72 people email me like in the first day. I was like, holy cow, what am I going to do with this? I can't sort through all this. And it was everything from, you know, I just got laid off and I'm just looking for something extra, to, you know, I'm leaving my position as a corporate marketing executive and I'm picking up clients, you know, like it was the whole gamut. So I'm like, how am I going to narrow this down? So that's when I came up with this process. And I went back to my Craigslist ad and I added to it this automated application process. So I made a Google form, and I'm going to give you guys my template for that Google form as well. And in that Google form, I tested them and I tried to get to know them. Things I want to know. I asked, how do they learn best? How do they prefer to communicate? You know, I want to know if they're responsive. I want to know if they can use the tools I need. So here's an example. One of my questions: what process do you use? What is the process you use to find the best value for air and hotel travel? And I asked this because I've done a ton of travel in my life. When I was in corporate, I traveled a ton internationally. So I just know airports. I know which flights work best. I know which seats work nice. I just know lots of tips and tricks in the travel industry. And so I know that if I'm going to outsource my travel, it better be somebody who knows how to use those travel tools like a pro. So this was one of the more specific questions that I asked. Now here's the trick. Responsiveness is the key. The people who respond first and completely are the only ones that you need to consider for interviews. Okay, so out of 72 people, at the end of the day, only about 8 of them actually completed this application, completed it well, and went through all the details. Let me show you some more of the details in here. I like to ask questions about personal organization, because if I'm going to hire somebody, especially to work remotely and we're exchanging files through email or whatever, like I need them to be personally organized. And you can learn a lot about people when you ask them, you know, what kind of planner do you like to use? How are your files organized at home? You know, are you a paper planner or a digital planner? So then when you're tasking them in the future, you kind of know already a bit about their method. By the way, LoriMercerCTO.com/how-to-hire is where you can go grab yourself a copy of this Google form. You can see I have the question, and then all this in caps sort of explains why I asked that question. So it gives you a great starter. What you're trying to do with this form is already set them up for success, right? Like you want them to move into the position with, you found the right person. It's like a marriage. I talk in this article, it's like a marriage, right? Like when you're working together in business, there's a lot of agreements you have together. There's a lot of time you spend together. There's a lot of things that you have to do together, and you really want to pick right. You don't want to have to make a mistake there. Okay, some more questions. You can find out how serious they are when you ask them about start date, like when can you start? In any upcoming travel, it doesn't mean they're not qualified for the job, but you just know, like if you don't ask that question and somebody starts on Monday and then they're like, hey, I'm going to be on vacation for 2 weeks starting next week, like that's kind of a bummer, right? So just get it out there and ask. I do ask the pay rate question as well because it sets the expectation that you're in the right ballpark, okay? No other reason. And it also shows me, like, one of the key criteria to know if somebody is self-aware and also low maintenance is if they rate their hourly pay to match their skill set, right? So somebody who has kind of a low-end skill but rates themselves up at $30 an hour, I'm like, that's going to be hard because I'm never going to meet their expectations, right? So you learn something by asking that question. Okay, last step. I make them do some things outside of this form, okay? I make them like, I give them in this case, I gave them a creativity test. I made them go to Canva, design something. I made them go to Google Drive and email me something. I just wanted to see that they, number one, paid attention to detail, and number two, knew how to use those tools. Since it is virtual, like you really want to know that they know their way around those tools, all right? So this is, by the way, the point where a lot of people failed out of the test. They might have completely done the form, but they just didn't follow up with the final details. Okay, so lastly, how to make it a success. So somebody asked about NDA and contracts, so I'm going to get into that here. Onboarding checklist. Contracts, make your meeting schedule, get access and logins, have clear work expectations, and figure out how you're going to measure results. If you can get this all defined and quickly ready, you're going to be kind of off the ground, you know, running. And I can't tell you how many times I sort of had delays and starts just because, oh, I didn't have access to this, oh, I didn't have access to that. It drives me crazy. So now our team has a checklist of all the things somebody needs access to, and we can get them up and running really quickly. So let me talk for a second about a contract. What makes a good contract? Disclaimer, I'm not an attorney. This is just life experience that I'm sharing. And there are lots of online resources that you can find, good legal advice, or even your local attorney for, you know, getting a good contract. But I like to start with a 30-day test and a review period before kind of firming up a long-term contract. So that builds in those review cycles we were talking about earlier. And it also gives everybody an out, right? Like if it doesn't work for me, it doesn't work for you, it gives everybody an out. The contract should be specific enough, but not so specific that you have to constantly alter the agreement. If there are specific deadlines, like say you're launching a new website or having a big new product launch, I would put those in the contract. And it doesn't matter if they're there unless you have consequences for missing those. So a lot of times with technical teams, you might want to give pay bonuses or cost clauses for missing a particular date, because a missed date in a tech world can really slow down a whole lot of things. Think about this. Like I don't ever want to have to find myself in court for anything related to my business. So a contract's there to protect both of you, but you have to sort of think through the end game. The reason you write down a contract is if somebody makes a breach of contract, then what does it look like? Like what is it going to do? So make sure you understand like how a contract ends, and hopefully you all end up on the positive side of an ending contract. I do include an NDA. This also can wash some people out, right? Because I will sometimes include a strict NDA that says, hey, I don't want you working for the next 12 months. You know, if you end your relationship with me, then you can't be working on a relatable business over the next 12 months, right? Because your IP is out there, your intellectual property, and you're trusting these people with all of that. So I think a strong NDA is totally acceptable. And if somebody sort of, you know, complains about that, they're probably not the right person for you, because maybe they have other intentions, like maybe you're not aligned on your goals, right? And that protects, you know, all your assets. So that's my opinions there on contracts. I'm trying to speed up now because we're at 44 minutes. Communication plans. You guys, expectation management is the key to conflict-free work relationships, right? So here's a slide from one of my trainings. I tell my virtual professionals, agree upon a method that matches the pace of the project, right? Sometimes with big projects, you need to be meeting twice a week, some medium projects weekly, some lower dollar work, twice a month might be okay. I encourage all my professionals to do email summary updates. And, you know, share it also, like I do encourage using an Asana system, which I'm going to show you next. Daily text check-ins sometimes on very high intense projects. It's just like, hey, just wanted to check in and give you an update on this. Totally a great professional skill. And here's a tip, use videos. So there's a lot of tools now where you can screen capture your screen and even you on video. So one of them is called Loom, L-O-O-M. I think it's useloom.com. And you can really walk through like, hey, I was just looking at this and I want to give you some feedback, right? I want to give you some feedback on this design, this, that, and the other. And it comes across very personal. They see your face on the screen while you're doing it. And the work ends up being done better because you're able to be more clear about what you're trying to perform, right? So I really highly recommend the video sharing. Okay, Asana work boards. So I have a very particular method that was not my own. Somebody shared this with me, full disclosure, of how I lay out a project board for a team. Asana, Trello, Basecamp, those are all great free tools that you can use as a team to track project work. My goal is that there's clearly listed tasks, that you know the status, that you know the owner, and that there's due dates. Okay, so the columns here, in case you can't see them, are not started, in progress, for review, completed, and then referenced. And here in Asana and Trello is the same. You can kind of move cards from one column to the next as they move through the progression. And it gives you a really good visual of where you are in the flow of work. And it also, you can have comments on cards, right? So now all your communication about your project is attached to that particular task in Asana and not lost in a bunch of text messages or meeting notes. I know I'm flying super fast through these slides. I'm going to stop and answer this question about thoughts on virtual professionals completing timesheets. Is it a matter of trust, or do I need to know what they've been doing each hour of the day? Okay, so you're paying for this work. So what I say to my team is, if I don't know how long it takes you to do something, then I don't know what it's costing me to run that in my business. Okay, so we were doing a weekly newsletter with virtual work opportunities. And when I asked them to kind of show me the time attached to that task, it turned out I was paying $300 a week for that email newsletter. And it was totally not bringing $300 a week of value to my business. So for that reason, and I say it to them, I'm like, I'm not asking you to track time because I'm checking up on you or I don't trust you. I need you to track time so that I know how long things take and how much I'm investing in my business. I think it does bring another layer of accountability as well. So I do like my virtual professionals to be completing timesheets. And also, if you do good work boards like this in Asana, then you already have a good feel for when they're working, right? So it's when are they in there commenting, when are they in there moving things from one status to another, gives you a lot of visibility that way. Okay, I'm going to mark that one as answered. Okay, signs you need to make a change. It happens, it isn't always a fit. Sometimes there's slow progress. Sometimes there's defensiveness. My favorite, and I tell everybody this at the beginning, is the falling off the face of the earth syndrome. I understand stuff happens. Stuff happens to all of us. Stuff happens to me. All you got to do is send me a text and explain, and we're good. But if you fall off the face of the earth with no explanation and you leave us and our team hanging, like that's a real no-no for me in this space. Because it's not like you're sitting next to each other in a cubicle and you can see like, wow, she's really distressed and she had to leave early. Gosh, something must be going on. You know, no, it's different in the virtual space. So don't fall off the face of the earth. That's my advice. Also, as the client, we can't fall off the face of the earth for them either. When your expectation is clear, poor quality work is another sign. Like if you're getting frustrated with the work, maybe they aren't skilled enough in that space. But you need to check yourself first, okay? Is it them or is it you? Maybe you weren't clearly communicating the task well enough. So I always check myself before I have the difficult conversation with a VA. There's 3 reasons things can be late. This is my project management years coming out of me. Either you underestimate the amount of work, you're working too slowly, which might mean you're lacking skills, or you're waiting on someone else. Those are the 3 reasons things fall behind. So if you kind of get yourself into that frame of mind when you think about the work that's being performed, it helps you have those conversations more, less emotionally, I guess I should say. Ultimately, I would say to trust your instinct when you need to make a change and just to minimize further damage and lost time. Okay, so this is it, guys. You literally could, and I'll go back and answer some questions, you literally could have somebody in 72 hours. And this is a challenge that I give myself now when I hire somebody. I want it to be done in 72 hours. If you write the good job description, you steal my application and use the application process. And yes, somebody asked, Facebook and Craigslist is a good place to post a job description. It depends on the position, but yes. The first place I think you should put it is out on your personal social channels and your professional social channels, because what did I say earlier? Your network is probably the first place you're going to find the right candidate for you. But then you need to do number 4. You need to take the next 3 days and block out time and concentrate on reviewing and immediately following up to prime candidates, okay? Because that shows that you're being responsive. That shows that you're right away, the expectations of I'm here, I'm not falling off the face of the earth, and I like to move fast and I like to move professionally, and here's how we get work done here. You're gonna find your best candidate in the first 3 days. If somebody applies 10 days after you've posted it and takes 3 more days to get back with the application, right? Like, is their work always gonna be that slow? Are they that busy that their work's gonna lag like that as well? So I'm sort of a strike while the iron's hot kind of person in this virtual professional space. All right, let me scroll down here and see if I missed anything. You can post it, I suggest posting to one job board. I don't suggest posting it out to a zillion. Like, really, only recently did I put something out on Upwork, and it was really a real technical thing, that Google Apps for Business thing. Most everything else I put out in my personal and kind of professional social media. If you're hiring somebody who you want to be local, I did also put that on Craigslist. I did just hire another local personal assistant, and I use like the local community groups, like, you know, Columbus area professionals, or, you know, whatever your like county or neighborhood like networking group is, use one of those as well. I was just told by an HR professional that there shouldn't be an application for an independent contractor, but asked to see a portfolio instead. So I can understand why they would say that. My opinion is that you're hiring this person to do work for your business, and it's in your prerogative how you want to screen a candidate, right? So even if you look at a portfolio, I wouldn't hire somebody without interviewing them, right? So my thoughts are that the application, and maybe don't use the word application, you know, use something else instead of that word if it kind of has a negative connotation, but it is like a virtual interview. And I do ask for the video at the end, right? So yeah, it might just be getting hung up on the word application there, because you do have to be cautious. Like, an HR professional would be somebody who's being cautious of, you're hiring a contractor, but you're treating them like an employee, right? Like, that's one of those fine legal lines you've got to be cautious of. And again, I'm not an attorney, but just beware of that line as you're hiring people. You should not be hiring a bunch of 40-hour-a-week contractors, for example. That would probably really be an employee kind of role. Okay, I'm going through questions now. Thank you, by the way, for everybody who stayed live this long. Okay, they're unanswered. Do you recommend an application document over responding to a profile listed on one of the sites? Where do you post the ad? Okay, let me answer that first. If I respond to a profile, I respond very specifically as well and say, hey, here's what I'm looking for, and if this job interests you, I'd love it if you could fill out this application. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Where do I post the ad? I start with my personal Facebook, I start with my business Facebook, and usually by then I have enough candidates. I will push it out to my email list. I will put it into the local Facebook groups as well, because even if somebody's virtual, like, it's nice if you could find somebody local, right? Because then you could meet for coffee every once in a while and kind of get things done that way. And then I go out to something like Upwork or Flex Jobs or Hire My Mom and post. That's kind of my order of posting things. Could you let us know about the virtual professional must-haves again, please? Okay, responsiveness, number one. Like, you need to find somebody who's going to be responsive and pay attention to detail and completes that whole application in its entirety. That's for my first must-have. The other thing is high-speed internet. I didn't say this specifically, but a good working laptop is also important. You don't want their technology breaking. Would you use a job board if you're looking for a virtual professional for working less than 1 month? Yes. Sometimes, especially those job boards or people just looking to pick up a small project here or there. Yeah, I definitely would. What level of talent would be most appropriate for lead generation? It's redundant, but requires a degree of brand knowledge. Yes, I think for lead generation, you need a level 3 for sure. You need somebody who understands strategy. Now, if you can systemize some of the tasks that you need to do for lead generation, right? Like being active in some Facebook groups or being responsive on customer service or something like that, then you can bring in some lower level skills, but I think lead generation is absolutely in the top tier. You've talked about this, but wanting to hear again, what is the best way to track their hours? I have, number one, good virtual professionals are already going to have a template and they're going to say, okay, here's how I report my hours and this is what I give you each month. Some of them aren't there yet. I said this is kind of a new industry, so I'm finding I'm having to coach a lot of virtual professionals into these professional skills. So I have a template and it has specifics about, you know, what I recommend or what I need, right? So to explain to them to what level of detail you want to track the hours, like at the project level or down to the task level, really think about what's your purpose for looking at the hours and try to not make it too crazy, like keep it light. None of these freelancers want to feel like they've got a big brother boss looking over their shoulders. That's not why they're doing the work. So just make an efficient method there that helps you know what you need to know from the hours that are being tracked. Recapping the Eisenhower box. Let me back. I don't know if I have enough time to recap the Eisenhower box, but I want you to Google that because that's a real general term that you guys can look up, the Eisenhower matrix, right? Next one, Russ here. Do you give access to your checklist for hiring virtual assistants? If you go to lauriemercercto.com/how-to-hire, you will find my application and whatnot, and I believe this is recorded and you'll be able to get to it over and over so you guys can see these slides in the future.
That is absolutely correct, Laurie. Everybody will get a chance to have a copy of the slides and get a chance to revisit and re-listen to the presentation again as well.
Good, good. Anything else I missed here, Russ?
You have been doing a brilliant job answering questions as you've gone through. Absolutely great, Laurie. And I'm sure that there will be the possibility of us blogging with some of the fantastic information that you've shared with us today. Absolutely amazing, and the timing, you've done that exceptionally well as well. I know that you've rushed through a lot of amazing information, Laurie, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us today. I think for anybody who's either looking to utilize or for that matter wants to become a virtual professional, you've given us some really huge insight and knowledge, and thank you very much indeed for that.
Well, yes, I see the comments about speed and fast is sort of my style, so thanks for hanging with me. I would just challenge you all to go out and make a fast decision. If you know you need to hire somebody, write a job description in the next 15 minutes and post it out there and see what happens. It's that simple. You might find the perfect person, or you might realize, like, oh, this is unrealistic. I'm dreaming up somebody that doesn't exist, right? But you don't know until you try it, so be decisive.
Brilliant, Laurie. Well, we've come to the end of the allotted time. So once again, thank you for your time and for your knowledge today. Just to recap, a recording of this webinar and all the others over the course of the virtual summit this week will be emailed and will be available to view again here on the Bright Talk platform. If you haven't already done so, please make sure that you register for and attend the other sessions that are taking place this week. Actually, Laurie is going to be presenting on technology for entrepreneurs on Thursday, so make sure you join her for that session. Later on today, we have a webinar session on how to build an engaged, inclusive and collaborative workplace. And we're going to kick off tomorrow's sessions with a webinar on how to market your business online. Please also remember to visit napw.com for details of the many benefits that membership of NAPW brings. And to bring us to a close, thank you once again, Laurie, and to everybody for joining us today. I very much look forward to welcoming everyone to the other virtual seminar sessions over the next few days. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.